Hi, welcome to Module 3. I can't believe you're already here. And we've now begun in this module to discuss the three main elements or functions or aspects, whatever you want to call it, of business. And the first one that we're going to focus on, the one that we're focusing on this week in Module 3, is management. We've been introduced to this concept of management before in Chapter 6. But specifically this week, we're going to look at management from the perspective of acquiring, using, applying, implementing resources and people to transform inputs into outputs. So that's the focus of management this week. It's going to be about how do we use the materials, the machines, the people, how do we coordinate those activities to allow us to transform, to take the inputs that we have and create those outputs that have value that consumers want, that consumers purchase, that allow us to be successful. In the first chapter, we're going to focus on the concept of operations management that has everything to do with that transformative process of the inputs moving to outputs. And it's important. I like this chapter because it describes from the onset how this field has kind of evolved from our first consideration of just as manufacturing or productions management, that's what we used to call it, to now the term operations management that not only embraces the traditional product, right, the tangible thing, but also incorporates the ideals of operations management or transformative management to the service type industry where we're producing things that are sometimes intangible, right? That are perishable, that can only be experienced at the time of essential production. So there's a distinction between service and products, of course, but it shows you how this term and how these concepts of operation management, planning, as well as implementing that transformation from inputs to outputs can be used in both types of industry. So it's important for us to understand how do we do that? How do we make things? How do we create things? And how do we, and by creating things, we invoke value into it? And our second chapter has to do with important aspect, the important attribute of firms, people. How do we manage our human resources? What are the types of people that we get into an organization? What are the types of people that we want to attract? And once we've attracted those people, how do we train them? How do we get them to be involved and to utilize their skills and capabilities in such a manner to help us? And also importantly, how do we retain those types of people? How do we keep them in our organization? How do we use their skill sets? And how are we able to keep them? And so it's important for us to understand both aspects, the operations part as well as the people part, but recognize that those two things are intimately tied together. Raw materials, manufacturing, inputs, right, that are used in a transformative process must be linked with our people. And especially that's true when we look at our service type industries, which are largely made up of individuals and that personal interaction. In some cases, of course, there is greater use of technology. So importantly, management, we're going to look at again, acquiring and using our people, our resources, our processes to transform those inputs into valuable outputs. Okay?